Let me be clear about the fact that I am not anti-capitalism. My perspective on capitalism is that, like any other model, it had a place in time, a place in history, and it had a function to perform, and it did it extraordinarily well. My perspective on it at this point in time is that we've outgrown the model, that it has accomplished what it was meant to do, whether we knew consciously or unconsciously what we were doing. We did have a trajectory as a species, and that trajectory was met. The goals and ambitions of the human species were met through the capitalistic enterprise system. But I think we've reached a point, a pivot point in our society and in our species where we are now, where continuing to do more of the same, simply because it's what we've known and what we've been doing, is not only not helpful, it's becoming harmful. So to break that down and look at what it is that capitalism did for us and honor and appreciate that, but then also understand as part of that reference what it is that we've accomplished that we no longer need to do, will help us come to a deeper realization about what this next system needs to look like to support where we're going as a species rather than where we've come from. So as we look at that, let's look at, capitalism has been around for probably about 5,000 years. Most people erroneously believe it was something that sort of emerged spontaneously with Adam Smith a couple of hundred years ago. But if you look at what capitalism is, it is the formation of capital, the bringing together of money to support industry and the creative output of humanity, and to help direct where resources go and which needs get met and so forth. So we've been doing that for thousands of years, and we've been doing it mostly unconsciously. So what was the world like 5,000 years ago when we first created money and we first began to use money, which is what capital is, it's money? Why did we create it? Why did we use it? Why did we want it? And what we see when we kind of roll back through time and move that curtain aside is that the population of the world was less than 200 million people. It was a very small human population. And most of the world was uncivilized, unsettled, wild, wilderness. Resources seemed to be endless, vast, abundant. We had no concept of the world ending or even being round. At that point, I think people still believed it was flat, or there was still some controversy around the concept of whether the world was round or flat. And the whole notion of what we were trying to do was build a civilization from scratch. And the energy source that was utilized to do that was human energy. We didn't have fossil fuels. We didn't have machinery. We had very rudimentary tools, and we had a few domesticated animals whose energy we were able to harness. But for the most part, everything that we were constructing was being constructed through the use of human energy and through the use of these very rudimentary tools. So if you think about what that group of people was trying to accomplish, and you realize that they wanted to make their life easier and to create a sustainable civilization and live in a way that was empowering and safe and would give the next generation an easier life than the life that the generation before had, we can see where the stimulus of capitalism, which is a high growth engine process, was excellent, because the formula that was used was the input of human labor into the larger system, the extraction of money as a result, payment for the labor that you put into the system, enabled you to purchase the collective fruits of human energy. It was a very simple system. So prior to that, where we had, say, bartering, there had to be this direct give and take between individuals, and it was very cumbersome and problematic. Money became the placeholder for the energy and the productivity that people were putting into the collective, into the society, if you will. And they extracted, at the point of insertion, they extracted money to be the measurement vehicle of what they had just put into the system. And then they could take it to some other point in the system, put the money in, and take back out something that was of comparable value to what they had put in some other locale. And that was a very efficient system for that time frame, particularly when most of the energy being used to create was human energy. And we needed all hands on deck. When you've only got 200 million people in the world and you want to settle the globe and you want to build a civilization from scratch, you can't afford to have people, hanging around doing artwork. So that was not a high priority for our species at the time. It was really about growth, construction, developing creative capacity, and expanding into the world. And capitalism was an extraordinarily high energy, high growth vehicle. Worked very well for that. And in fact, if you roll forward 5,000 years to what we've been doing, and you see how it's played itself out, what we discover is that this whole process, most of which has been unconscious, it wasn't like someone sat down and said, this is how we want to build a society. It's unfolded this way. But most of what the process has empowered has been humanity turning its attention to making life easier for itself. And we see that really coming into play with the acceleration of technology and industry in the industrial age. So, and that's only been 100, 150 years, really, that the industrial age has come into being. So, we went through thousands and thousands of years of this process of moving around the globe, exploiting resources, settling, building civilizations. And all of a sudden, here we are, just 150 years ago, where we discovered fossil fuels and the capacity to create machinery that operated off fossil fuels and replaced human energy and human labor in the marketplace. And suddenly, we could make a whole lot more with a whole lot less human energy using those technologies. And that has continued and accelerated and advanced over the past 150 years. We call it productivity. And really, the definition of productivity is that we have more and more products going out with fewer and fewer human hours inputted into the process of creating them. So if you ask the question today, why don't we have enough jobs? And this seems to be a huge question that's really disturbing our society. The truth is, we don't have enough jobs because for the last 5,000 years, our focus has been on alleviating our need to work by building machines and creating automated systems and computers and technologies and productivity gains such that we can do more with less human labor. It's wonderful. I mean, capitalism was beautiful for that. However, what we have yet to look at as the other side of the equation is when you take the human energy out of the equation and you free up human energy not to have to work anymore, we haven't resolved the wage issue. The only way that we can then go around in the sphere and tap into the things that the machines are being produced is through accessing those things with money. But the only way to get money, or the primary way to get money in our system, is through injecting your physical energy into the system in the form of labor. And significantly less labor is desired or required by businesses today. And because there's 7 billion people today rather than a couple of 100 million, you've got a tremendous number of labor hours striving to input themselves into the system in exchange for the capital that they need so that they can in turn buy the fruits of the productivity of the machinery and the technology that humanity has created. So we're at a space in time where the formula has irrevocably broken down. And we don't want to acknowledge it. We don't want to accept the fact that government has stepped in and funded the capacity of so many individuals to continue to participate, but just barely, in the system. And we think there's some way we can tweak it and make it better. But, my sense of it is that we can't. That the problem is a structural problem. And this is the challenge that really faces us today.